Next booth.
Anyway, I started blasting.
Welcome to Dues Paid, your premier podcast resource for the perspective of two barely young men who sampled the platter of earthly delights. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Josh.
And hey, Josh, I think of myself as kind of like your maitre d' for the crazy parts of the internet. So I was curious if you wanted to talk about some of the crazy shit that can be found on the internet, or we can do a little bit of like catching up and talking about our day-to-day lives. Which direction do you want to go today?
Well, garçon, I would love to catch up with you. I feel like we did a little bit of the crazy internet last time.
Sure.
Let's other than the blue carousel shits.
Well, you don't want to talk about aliens with me? That's fine.
I mean, aliens could be a part of our daily lives. We don't know.
They're part of my daily life.
Oof.
Okay, personal stuff. I got one for you. I have printed out some PDF forms to send in to the IRS in order to start a church.
Wait, what?
Yeah, I'm going to try to legally start a D&D based church. And we're going to see how that goes. You only have to fill out like 15 pages of forms.
Our heavenly mother of the D20.
Yeah, or something. But, I figure like, yeah, Church of D&D.
Praise be to RN Jesus.
Right. I mean, like, one of the things is like, you have to have like some kind of regular meeting or commune, and I'm like, yeah, we do that. Those are our sessions.
Yep. Yeah. And they're weekly, and they're usually on Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. So like, we're gonna see what kind of things get opened up for that, as far as like I'm gonna figure out all kinds of like tax stuff, and we'll see what I can do with that. Not that I plan on doing anything shady, anyone listening. But I think it'd be interesting to see like what resources are available to purveyors of churches. So that's kind of my big lead-in one for today.
Oh, it's a good tax dodge. I know that.
Well, yeah. Well, I know that. I mean, if there's one thing we know about churches in America is that they are tax-free. But
and
still,
it's super easy to set them up, because I was watching Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, and they actually started a church just for a joke.
Yeah, no, totally. And you can become a reverend doctor over a weekend too. So I'm looking into that.
Oh my God. Is a reverend doctor called a rockter?
I don't think so. I think this guy, you
I do appreciate the thought that you gave to that, though. No, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Not just like, hey, shut the fuck up.
No, come on. Do you ever hear of Robert Evans? He does the podcast Behind the Bastards and It Could Happen Here.
I'm not a big podcast guy. You are kind of also my maitre d' in that sense as well. So no, I have not heard of them.
Robert Evans is good people. He does like real journalism, like goes to the war zones and does interviews and stuff. But he also does a lot of stuff where he's like, I believe he founded the Church of Drinking Bleach or something in response to the internet being stupid. And he like made himself a reverend doctor through like a 2-day process where he just like had to go to Montana or something. So I'm looking into that as well.
Oh my God. I feel like I have to start the Game Cave Church.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, oh my God. I'm a huge Zelda fan.
Go to the church? Yeah. You
right?
kidding me?
Oh, sure.
That's no longer capital
dodge.
gains. That's no longer income.
Yes, it is. It is for our Lords and Savior. And I will say I'm a huge Zelda fan, so we're definitely going to worship the 3 goddesses.
Yeah, why not? I mean, you can make it however you want.
Din, Nehru, and Faeror.
Yeah.
That way I can have the Triforce as our symbol. Oh, that would be great.
And all of your, the 3 major pillars of your religion can be wisdom, power, and courage, And then it's easy from there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's easy after that. No, I'm not gonna say that.
No, go ahead.
No, I was
Go
just
ahead.
gonna say,
I'm
I
intrigued.
wonder how long it's gonna take me to get to the point where my priests are raping little boys.
Oh, that should have gone. That should have stayed in the closet, like
right.
the little boys.
Oh, well, we'll just edit that part out.
You're, I don't think we should. I mean, like, we'll learn from our mistakes. We're capable of admitting them.
Well, also, it's not like I would just like to say that I said how long it's going to take my priests to get to the point where they're raping little boys, not how long until I get to start raping little boys. And it's also that was a joke about the fucking Catholic Church raping little boys. So who are you really mad at?
I'm not happy with the Catholics. I'll say that much. I think they probably did a little bit of shit that's not that good.
I always hated that internet culture of like misplaced outrage, where it's like somebody makes a joke about Catholic schoolboys getting raped and then they get mad at the comedian, and it's like the Catholic Church got away, gets away. Sorry, not got away. It's not a past thing. This still happens. Raping little boys, and then just nobody talks about it.
Yeah, no, I mean,
it's just a punchline of our society, right? Where it's just like, haha, Catholic Church rapes little boys, blah, blah, blah. And then nothing happens. It just keeps happening. And it's like, why are we normalizing that behavior?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's the same thing with like, don't drop the soap jokes and all of that, where it's like, it's shitty. It's just like, I think there's something inherent in like, in order to really get into it and really get into the darkest parts of ourselves and looking at ourselves in a species and what we're capable of, especially when given trust and power, and how easily we can abuse that and make ourselves martyrs or heroes. It takes you down a different road, man. Because I mean, it's the nature of power to insulate itself, and power wants to protect power, and like the moral compromises that institutions will go through, like the Catholic Church, right? Like, well, if we admit one, then that means that we have to admit that there's a problem. So we'll play a fucking shell game for fucking like 300 years. No, it's not a good. But don't worry. I say that we keep this in just because, like, it gets messy, but like, fuck it, life is messy,
That's true. Plus, how bad could internet backlash really be?
For people at our size, who fucking cares?
Yeah, that's true.
I mean,
I'll watch this stays on the channel until we get huge, and then
I was just thinking, like, we'll have to apologize.
5 years ago, these guys made a joke about Catholic.
I was okay. No, and I was talking with some friends, before our D&D game the other day, and I mentioned Trevor Moore and Whitest Kids You Know, right? Did you ever watch those?
I don't. I'll say I've seen a couple of sketches, so I'll just say no.
Okay, well, I mean, if you've seen a couple of sketches, you probably get the general vibe. They're like edgy teenager kind of kids in like the early 2000s who are making social and political commentary through sketch comedy, right? So there's a lot of cringy bullshit in there and a lot of stuff that's like
they did The Grapist, right?
The Grapist, yeah, that's one. Business Sniper, the one where Abraham Lincoln won't shut up in a theater and that's why he gets assassinated. Yeah, a lot of these a lot of the premises themselves are just like funny because of their absurdity, and I brought them up, and somebody was like, "Oh yeah, I discovered WKUK like a few years ago. They didn't age well," and I'm like, "Yeah, they're from like 2006, my dude. The world was a different place,
But then you got to think about that. It's like, so as culture evolves, right? Yeah. We tend to think of ourselves as more correct as time has gone on, right? Like we're more aware of everyone's problems, like
every generation gets more woke, you could say.
I hate that word, but
let's call a spade, right?
yeah, okay. I'll use the parlance of our time because people will largely understand that when they hear it. Every generation gets increasingly woke. That is what we like to assume, correct? So, is it not wrong for people to say that didn't age well because we are more woke 15 years later than they were back in early 2000 when they made those jokes? So were those jokes not wrong? Or were they still okay because they're jokes?
I think that it's a criticism that doesn't offer anything, right? It's not constructive. It's just saying like, boy, looking back, that sure was racist or whatever, you know, because I mean the sketch that I was talking about was the gallon of PCP sketch, which is just about like, you know, running into an old high school friend and being like, oh, what have you been up to? And he goes, oh, I got a gallon of PCP, and he's holding it, you know. And like in the situation, it's like, yeah, I just left my girlfriend. Yeah, he in the situation, he's like, yeah, I just left my girlfriend as collateral for the PCP, and I'm not coming back. And like that's the whole joke, right? And it's like, well, yeah, it didn't age well, but also like nobody's advocating for using or gathering a gallon of PCP at a time. Like it's on its face supposed to be absurd.
I think
and
sorry,
so looking backwards with a moralistic view on stuff like that, it's like it's just missing the forest for the trees completely, you know? It's like it's not pertinent or relevant to the discussion. They weren't trying to make a more moral place in the of the world or anything. It is what it is.
Sure. And that's
maybe I'm showing my age.
Oh well. No, I think that we're showing I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I feel like saying things like that. Oh, what am I trying to say? I got to gather my thought. So it's a joke. Is one thing that like a lot of people fall behind, like, oh, it was just a joke. It was just a joke. Blah blah blah.
Right.
Some
Schrodinger's
jokes fall
asshole.
flat. Yeah. But so like there's a lot of people that say like there's nothing funny about rape. You can't make rape funny. And George Carlin covered this. Like picture Porky Pig raping Elmer Fudd, which
I mean, yeah, inherently
it still makes me chuckle. But
I mean, yeah, it's the thing is there's nothing that's so sacred by making something sacred, you inherently make it funny. You inherently make the sacrilege of it risque and it to some extent funny, right? By making hallowed ground, it's normal, like it's normal behavior for like, you know, when it was all fucking like feudalism and farms, right? It was normal to go into a place you weren't, somebody else's farm, and knock their cows over for fun. And part of the fact that it was funny is that you weren't supposed to be there and it pissed off the farmer, right? That's just the nature of making protected spaces, is that to some extent there's always going to be someone who's going to find some amount of humor in breaching that social convention.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
Yeah.
I mean, Patrice O'Neill also commented on it because there was some clam talking about feminist views on jokes and stuff like that. Huh?
I said clams, but really loud.
Oh, why?
Because you said there was some clam talking.
Oh, man, it's just when someone's annoying, you don't want to use the proper pronoun or noun for them because you want to say something derisive, and this person was being annoying.
Fair
because
enough.
Patrice O'Neill sitting here trying to explain it. It's like the guy told a rape joke. It fell flat. It didn't work. That sucks. But that doesn't mean that he was being serious about rape. Like, he was just making a rape joke, and it didn't work, and that sucks because that's a real bad joke to have fall flat. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, no,
And,
you're certainly not gaining favor with anybody at that point.
Yeah, and so she was presenting this argument like it was this was fucking years ago too.
Was this
and
around
she
the
was
Daniel Tosh thing?
I don't know. I haven't
Okay.
heard anything about Daniel Tosh in so long. But
No worries.
and she's presenting it like it's this very serious thing, and all this. And Patrice O'Neal is just sitting here like, look, bombing is the worst thing for a comedian.
Yeah.
Straight up. And so him bombing was worse than anything else that could have happened. He wasn't being serious. He wasn't advocating for rape. He just made a joke and it didn't work. That's it. That's the end of the thing. You got offended by it. Sorry you got offended. That sucks. You know? But it's a comedy club. You don't know what's going to happen. If you got offended, say something. Don't make it this big thing about cancel that dude and all these other things. Just be offended and go home. Or get over the fact that it was just a joke.
Yeah, there's definitely a line to balance when it comes to, like, you know, I mean, the nature of comedy is saying something incongruent with the expectations that you've set up, right?
Sure. Not only that, but I mean, it's all subjective. I mean, other
but
Josh.
part of what makes it subjective, right? Is that the social environment that you grow up in and the social norms can be subjective from group to group to group in little ways, right? And the idea is the thing that you're saying that's incongruent is incongruent with the social expectations of a general group. And whether it hits the mark for a person particularly comes back to how you were fucking raised, and what your expectations are. I'll get off my fucking soapbox now.
No, you're fine. This whole show is a soapbox for both of us.
I got other topics.
But I just mean, like, it's the whole thing where it's like, so with this pulling this back to Whitest Kids You Know is that was humor, and what's more is that it's humor of the time is satirical of the time.
Yes.
Just like how we can't predict what's going to happen in the future because we're blinded by the present, their view of satire can't predict where social norms are going to go in 15 years. And what's more is that looking back, I mean, you want to go ahead and look back at something fucking crazy. Doctors were prescribing whiskey to children at the turn of the century. So
and cocaine and opium to soldiers.
Yeah, because cocaine and opium because cocaine and opium were just not abused back then, and so
no,
it wasn't.
Were.
Yeah,
they were.
But it was different. It was a different time.
Yeah,
and shit was just way less regulated. And you also have to think about the fact that in the last 100 years, the average life expectancy has shot up dramatically because of soap, proper plumbing. We know more about the human body, so we don't abuse drugs and prescribe whiskey to small children and things like that. Mental acuity has increased because we don't do terrible shit to children anymore. It's almost like, as time progresses, society changes, sometimes for the better. And yes, is there a large movement of let's get rid of this, or this or that, and things from the past need to be ripped down and stuff like that? Yeah, but at the same time, we don't need statues of racist generals.
Sure, yeah.
Sure, we don't need a big mountain full of old racists. Like,
you saw that Marjorie Taylor Greene quote where she was talking about the statues, right?
Is she the one with the Jewish space lasers?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. We can't wait to hear what she says about statues.
Her thing was just like, even if there was a statue of Hitler or a statue of the devil, I wouldn't want it pulled down because we use those to teach our kids about history. And I'm sitting here like, books.
I have several questions.
Yeah, just also have you heard of books? You don't need a whole statue to transmit that information. We can just write it.
Can we talk about the fact that
printed type?
Can we talk about the fact that a statue of the devil definitely exists somewhere?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think it's in Chicago, right? Because the church, like, because or it's not. Maybe it's Detroit, I think. But it was a thing where there was a statue of the Ten Commandments outside of a courthouse. And so the local Church of Satan was like, well, if you're putting that out there, you have to put a Baphomet out there too. Otherwise, it's discrimination. and so now there's both.
That's delightful.
Yeah, it's great.
Oh, people are so stupid.
Dude, the church, I mean, like, Church of Satan can, depending on which nomination you look at, you know, there's some branches that have spotty shit attached to them. But, like, ultimately, like, the... you know, the some of the tenements are pretty cool. It's like, just, you know, question the divine right of authority and, you know, act on your own preservation and, like,
Sure. And we talked about this in the last episode, is that, you know, like, the good part of religion is that, like, that good part and stuff like that. The bad part obviously would be, you know, everything else.
Right.
So
yeah.
the core tenets of question the divine right of authority, absolutely 1000%. The concept of the divine right to rule is ridiculous in a world without magic.
Sure.
You know, like, if holy magic or larger amounts of magical power existed, then yes, perhaps you do have a genetic or divine right to rule. You know what I mean? But we're all just fucking people.
This is true. Let's see. Speaking of crazy shit that people in my D&D group say. Hey, would you? Okay, I got a couple ways I can go with this. One of them is I've been annoyed with bad character writing in D&D groups, and the other one is that you know that I'm running a homebrew world / campaign, and I need help.
Riffing off the first point, I would say that I am annoyed by lazy character writing rather than bad, because I would feel like 90% of people that play D&D are not authors and thus have a hard time developing a character.
Sure.
They can put as much effort as they want into it, but it's still going to be bad because they're not that great at writing.
Okay. Let's get into this then. Can I? Because I have a specific that I want to talk about.
Okay.
Yeah.
However, I will say that I hate lazy character writing where they just basically, they're just like, yeah, like my guy is like angry all the time because like his parents are dead. And then you're like, oh, how did they die? And you're like, they just died. Like, that's lazy. Like, to explain why you're angry all the time. Like,
sure.
Come on.
Yeah, well,
that's just a terrible example. But I've been around people who just like when we were doing our homebrew campaigns, well, not even homebrew, but just like 3.5, people would just write ambidexterity into their backstory just so that they can get that free talent. And I'm like, this is so stupid. You can't make free talents into your backstory. Stop doing that.
Yeah, no, that's I wouldn't allow that at my game, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. And it was annoying to me that people.
At the age of 12, he discovered he could read people's minds. Well, did you spec for it?
Yeah. No, I just wrote it into my backstory so I can read minds, even though I'm a fighter.
Okay, well, so that means that you think you can read people's minds, which means that you're borderline schizophrenic at that point.
Yeah, that would actually be a really good character trait. At age 12, he started thinking that he could read people's minds and thus developed dissociative personality disorder.
I mean, yeah, dude, that's how that shit happens. Okay, so I've got a character here, right? We'll to protect the innocent, we'll say that her name is Janine. Okay, great.
Garofalo?
Yes, Janine Garofalo and her perilous expedition.
She's hilarious.
I'm gonna open this up here. Okay, so a couple things. She comes from money. Her family was grew a dynasty off of trying to help people somehow. She fell ill. She fell ill young. Had multiple childhood homes. They had to get a hag involved to help with her sickness, but that means that when she hit puberty, her skin turned green and she had antlers and she was socially ostracized and only trotted out in the halls of nobility in 15-minute bursts when she could have an illusion of herself. At 16, her young brother falls ill to the same illness that she had, and she cares for him for years, and then he dies, and then she comes of age, and she willingly decides to disappear herself from the rest of her family and society to go live out in the woods for 8 years to become a forest medicine woman. And now, after all of that, we jump in as her character, and her big thing is that she likes to wear disguises so she can go help out homeless people.
I'm genuinely, I feel like you just assaulted me with words. Like there was no real, that was like Mad Libs. Well, you're like, and she comes from, can I get a noun? Money. Oh, she comes from money. Okay. And then what happens to her when she's younger? She got sick. Oh, she got sick. And they had to go see the hag. I would have gone with doctor, but they went to see the hag to fix her. And like you just kept saying things, and I was like, where did that come from?
There's a lot of where did that come from in this backstory.
And then it ended with, so she can take care of the homeless. And it's like, what?
Yeah, exactly. The reason that I'm getting into this is because I was sent this like 3 to 4 paragraph document, right? And they asked me for for my take on it, right? And I'm like, okay, well, to me, she should be spiteful. Life has been cruel to her,
sure.
Like
chip on your shoulder and all that.
What's that?
Chip on your shoulder and all that. If anything, that would make her less likely to help homeless.
Yeah, she should be socially maladjusted because she has constantly been kept away from her peers through most of her life. And
if you really wanted to not necessarily RP, but if you really wanted to statistically RP that, you would make sure that she had low charisma, because she would. She's ugly. Well, ugly is subjective, but she is ugly to her.
She looks different. Yeah.
And she is socially inept. She has low charisma. She would have to.
Yeah, she fully rejected society to live as a hermit in 8 years, and apparently outside.
If anything, she would definitely have dissociative personality disorder.
Or, I mean, like, the only company that this woman has that's not, the only social, like, opportunities that this character has to talk and interact outside of the time that she spent in high court in 15-minute chunks to have like these like interaction, like these it's not a barter, but these like transactional relationships, right? And then she spends 8 years in the forest, and her only company is people who are scared of her as the forest witch seeking some kind of answer from a hag, people that have heard about the forest witch and want to go and try to kill her, or the complete apathy that is the animal kingdom. And like, I brought this up and they were like, oh, fascinating takeaways, especially because I considered, I wanted her to be, the personality as I formed it, is I wanted her to be quiet and demure and just looking for ways to help, I'm like, so the backstory didn't matter then, did it?
Basically, no, yeah, that's exactly it. Your backstory is that of a very damaged, psychologically fragmented individual who would do nothing except scorn the outside world, and your character is, oh, she just wants to help, and like
she's Mother Teresa but green.
Oh yeah, she's
like fucking what? You kidding me?
God. She's the Mean Green Gang's sister.
She is not rowdy nor rough. Jesus.
But
Yeah,
I mean, that's what it is, right? And now this is a perfect example of what I just said. That is not lazy at all, because
Sure.
she put that you said 4 or 5 paragraphs, right?
Yeah,
that's
about
not
4
lazy.
paragraphs.
That's not lazy in the slightest sense of the word.
No, but
it
it's
is
fucking
bad.
wasted energy.
Yeah, it is bad. And like I
Yeah.
said, you can put a lot of time and effort into it, and I appreciate that, but it's still bad. Like,
Yeah.
just because you wrote 4 paragraphs doesn't mean it's a good backstory, especially because it is entirely incongruous with the final sentence of your backstory.
Right. It doesn't. It's a wonderful backstory that doesn't seem to apply to the character you've made, and that is so frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Speaking of, yeah.
I had
go
a,
ahead.
I had a, I had a part. I love making backstories, by the way.
Yeah.
It is probably one of my favorite parts of making a character. I will make the backstory, or I will decide what I want to be, and then write the backstory to explain why I am the way that I am. That way, it's congruous. I wanted to play a bard, and the way that I wanted to play the bard is I wanted to have a cloak, a half cape with like hidden daggers in it.
Okay.
And have you ever seen Trigun?
Very little, but I know the vibe.
The girl with the white cape, she has like a bunch of tiny guns in her cape.
Okay.
It's like that, but with knives, because obviously it's D&D. There's not really guns, and I don't like guns anyway. So
There are guns in D&D.
You shush. That is blasphemy.
I've seen too many rogues and artificers get shot to death with their own firearms.
But yeah, so I wanted to make this bard that had this cape, and there were other various accoutrements to his outfit, and basically his backstory ended up being that some time ago there was a festival, and there was a woman who was being beaten by her husband, and she went out to the festival, and there was a bard traveling through, and he picked her up and did stuff like that. And it ends up being that they have a kid 17 years later, or sometime later. There's I don't actually remember the time period. There's another festival going on, so the bard has come back through the town, and the wife has killed the husband and is insane, and the kid is basically I think it's because he's still a kid as this has happened. And so he's still small, and the bard basically recognizes that he is his kid, you know, and takes him under his wing, never tells him he's his kid, and trains him to be like the next bard in the line of bards that he is like the umpteenth bard in. And there are physical things that they have on to pass down to the next generation of bards in this line of barding, which I'm kind of creating the fact that there are successors to bards with this, but there's things like there was the instrument of choice with this was this blue sitar, which I got because I really like the way that it looked in Kingdom Hearts 2. Mm-hmm. So he's got this blue sitar. He has this large brimmed hat with a phoenix feather in it, which is its own story. The half cape is like really ornate, and just the various other things that are on him that are from previous generations that are passed down from bard to bard. And so now it's my guy's time, and so the guy basically trains him to be the way that he teaches him how to be the way that he is, and all that stuff, and then he eventually passes all his things down to him and stops being his bard mentor and just lets him go on his own way, carrying on the mantle. Because I mean, in a world where oral tradition is basically how things are passed on, someone that looks as distinguished, or is someone that is so easily distinguishable because of all of the crazy things on them, you're going to be walking through and you're going to be like, hey, you're that bard. And it's basically going to be like Batman, where it's like all you need to do is keep having somebody wearing the mask, and they're going to think Batman's immortal. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense too.
And so this is how my character came to be, and that's the backstory that I wrote for it. And I really enjoyed writing that. It's very simple, but
yeah, no, and I especially like the idea of that sort of. At first I didn't follow with the whole thing of like a bard having a protege and it passing down further and further. But once you include the idea of reputation combined with a sort of signature look that comes from a certain school of like a certain kind of bard college type, that makes a lot of sense. I like it.
yeah, I thought it was really cool. My favorite thing that I did in the entire campaign, well, first of all, I enjoyed the hell out of role-playing a bard. Like, we were out in the wilderness, and I would, like, pull out, like, my pack, and everybody else would be, like, you know, scruffing through the dirt and, and stuff like that. But I had, like, a nice camp set, and I would always set up, like, this really ornate tent to sleep in, which always took me, you know, like, an extra hour a night to set up. But
Right.
I was like, no, I'm going to sleep in the way that I want to sleep, because that is how bards do it. And
my
so
tent will be the first to be attacked by raiders.
probably, but and so I would have like this really nice thing, and then I would wake up in the morning and I would start brewing up some coffee, and I would have some eggs and some fruit that I would cut up, and I was narrating this to the DM as I would, because I wanted to be very specific about how my guy woke up and how, you know, very particular he was about the way that he wanted the things to be, and it was all very nice. Even if we were in the wilderness, that's no reason to go into the battlefield must.
Right,
You know,
right.
like it was like that. And so that was how my guy presented it all, and he just had some nice food all prepared, and we get into battle. And my role, and I feel like as I've gotten older, this has become my default role in playing D&D, because when I was younger, I would play like barbarians and fighters and stuff like that.
Right.
Guys who had like 6 intelligence, you know. But as I've gotten older, I always play like the wizard or like the techie or like the bard, and like my role in default becomes the strategist, because Josh is a strategist, and so I become the strategist of the team because it's what my brain defaults to. And so I have naturally just started playing characters where, yes, the way that I role play them is different, but my main role in the party generally remains strategist.
Right.
So I stayed back playing my songs. Sorry. I stayed back playing my songs and like firing my crossbow occasionally and like directing everybody else on what to do.
Yeah, I've played a couple of characters that do hang back. There's, you know, Coca the Wizard, who, I mean, let's be real, the whole thing is that you fire off one big spell and immediately get dropped, and that's fine. I played a utility druid, it's always fun because, you know, it was Circle of Spores too. So it was more about kind of like standing in the center of everything and kind of controlling the flow of traffic, by making these areas where, just these areas that do damage if you pass through them. But recently I started playing a rogue, right? A psychic rogue.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Did you realize that you could read people's minds at the age of 12?
There's a little bit of that, but also he's a cat. You know, he's a 3 foot tall tabaxi. So basically
Cats are naturally chaotic evil.
He'll just take his cloak off and like go and be a cat and pester people psychically until they give him things. You know, just like, human, you should hand me that fish. Saloon will bless you. You know, and then they hand him the fish. And, you know,
Why does he sound like Puss in Boots?
Because he's a psychic cat. You know, what are you gonna do? But
Sound like Antonio Banderas.
But by playing a rogue, and a psychic rogue, which means that a lot of my attacks are just like bolts of psychic energy that I can throw, right? And being able to uncanny dodge. I've started to really get into this spot of like hanging out towards the back, watching what's going on, and then when I'm needed, just kind of like jumping in, like showing up as a decoy for a little bit, taking half damage on anything, and then just bolting and hiding. And once I got into that, I started making this new character who is a wild mage sorcerer, who's built exclusively for like up in front combat, which is gonna be fun.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so like magic armor, shield, booming blade, lightning lure, like all the cantrips are about controlling their movement. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how it goes.
I wanted to. I've kind of been working on a homebrew class. I don't have anything really written down or anything like that, but it's just kind of like in brain.
Sure.
Which is a sword mage kind of. There's in Final Fantasy there's always been kind of like that in the wings there's been like that one class that I can't remember what it's called. It might even be called sword mage, I don't know. Where they can basically imbue weapons with a spell.
Okay. So like enchanting magic.
Yeah, but the idea behind it is that they're basically a wizard, but they don't have the ability to externally cast their magic. Like all their magic is for some reason like locked inside of them, and they have to be touching something in order to cast it on that thing.
Yeah, well, that's a thing that warlocks can do already. It's called a hexblade warlock, where basically their sword is their arcane focus. Like rather than a wand or a staff, it's like they cast their magic using their sword.
Well, yeah, but then they do cast the magic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not instead of it casting, it'll just be like if they imbue their sword with like, I don't know, fireball spell, right?
Okay.
The damage that would be in the fireball spell would be then in the sword. And then when you hit something with the sword, it doesn't like suddenly cast fireball. It just does the damage in the sword or with the sword.
I would think that it should cast fireball on a hit, right? Not like fine, all the damage comes from the sword, but it still has to be like the same AoE damage centered on the weapon. Like, I think it'd be cool to like, because then you have like that whole risk and reward thing too, and like you might get lucky with if you also had like a shield reaction too, so you go to hit with a sword, and it casts fireball in this radius, and inherently it's like it's centered on your sword, so like you just have to be able to survive what you throw at them.
Yeah. Or you can just like strike the ground at their feet.
Yeah, or chuck your sword at them. Like you put all of the magic in the sword, and then you just fucking throw it, and like wherever it lands, that's where it happens.
There were a lot of other cool things that I was thinking of, but I never really got to the point where I would iron out any real details. It was all just stuff up in my head.
For sure.
But I always thought that it was a unique thing. Because there was, so much about like enchanting and stuff like that. It always just ends up being kind of very similar.
Yeah, that is one thing that I wish D&D could be better at. That's one of the times that I think that Skyrim has beaten D&D, and well, there goes everybody. But the Skyrim enchantment system was really cool. Being able to like basically being able to refill any number of other resources on hit, I think would be worth expanding into for D&D. Josh, I'm curious. Have you heard about Unreal Engine 5 coming out?
I have seen many things about it, especially from Corridor Crew.
Okay, what'd you learn from them? Because I only have like two things, which is Lumen and Nanites.
Well, nanites are that's what the I don't know a lot about how all these things are rendered, but basically what I got the gist of from nanites is that instead of everything being rendered as like a whole thing, they're being rendered as like extremely small particles, kind of like atoms.
Yeah, well, what it seems like is happening from what I've gathered is that it seems like in real time, Nanite renders polygons that it needs to render relative to camera position. So like, and it can make those polygons go as small as a pixel. But basically like it realizes what size it is on screen and renders detail accordingly. I believe that's the case. Am I wrong here?
You know more about it than I do, then, honestly, because they just briefly touched on it in the VFX Artist React episode that I watched. Which, by the way, that is a great YouTube channel.
Oh yeah. What was their big takeaway?
They were just blown away with not only how it's going to affect gaming, but how it's going to affect movies as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, movie studios are capable of doing what Unreal Engine 5 is going to make video games capable of doing, except for the reason why video games don't do it is because it would make video games require rooms full of computers in order to work. The reason why movie studios are able to do that is because they don't have to do things in real time. They can render it down once and then it's fine, and the renders take months.
You know, here's a fun factoid on CGI rendering from movies. Guess how much, like the price range for a graphics card used for rendering a final product at Pixar costs.
How much?
Around $60,000.
That's a lot.
Yeah, well, and it's because everybody goes to their home stations, right? They plug in their numbers, they do what they have to do, and piece by piece, they take it to the sort of master render machine, and then they get to look at what the results are afterwards.
Yeah, $60,000 is how much I owe on my house right now. Just in case anybody needed a reference to how big that fucking number is.
$60,000 is a number that I will never see in my lifetime.
We'll see.
We'll find out.
Yeah. Never say never.
That's fair. The other one is Lumen. Do you know about that one?
Obviously, from context clues, I know that it means something about light, but that's
Sure.
that's where my knowledge ends with lumens.
Okay. So Lumen is an app on Unreal Engine 5 that or it's like an add-on. But what it does is it creates its own real-time ambient bouncing light, which normally you would have to wait an hour for, to render a still image that does all the math for bouncing light. But in Unreal Engine, you can literally real time move a light source, and like the color of the light will change depending on how close it is to a light next to a green wall. If you move it closer to the green wall, the bounce back will actually show green in the shadows because that's the ambient light being reflected. And this is all happening real time too. It's a huge jump.
Yeah. I mean, this seems like one of those once a generation leaps.
Yeah, this is a big one for sure. And I'm really excited because like I've tried to make static meshes and maps in Unreal 4 before, and the main thing that I've run into is that the process that I've used and tried is mainly like a series of bitmap drawings that I've done, which is it's like an elevation map, but it's like black and white, and like black is a certain like black is sea level depth, white is 100 feet, right? And so you kind of draw this image, and it'll interpolate it. But the method that I used ended up making way too much extra geometry in the landscape. But now we can handle it. So I feel like I'm really excited because I feel like I'm on the cusp of something brand new that hasn't been done before. So I'm playing around with Unreal 5, and I'll let you know what ends up happening with it. But fingers crossed, we're gonna get mandala based worlds, hopefully.
That would be cool.
They're super chill to run around in.
I have done nothing with Unreal 5. I probably won't for a while. I don't know that much about graphical editing and 3D rendering and all that stuff. I'm still learning.
Hey, and that's fine. I mean, like, it. I would check out, like, Unreal 5 is still in early access right now. I would check it out because like now's the best time to learn the basics of it. I'll even send you a tutorial if you're interested, because I've got like a 6-hour tutorial queued up that I'm going to be doing in the next couple of days. But
not even sure that I've even used Unreal 4. No, I know that I haven't. I don't know why I said I'm not sure.
Well, Unreal, the nice thing about Unreal 4 and 5 is that they're both free to use. And then it's like if your product that you use Unreal for, like if it gains commercial success, they get like a 5% fee, off of profits. And then if you hit 1 million in profits, then there's some legalese or something, but it's a
good old
free,
legalese.
yeah, but it's a free, it's a free use commercial video game making platform. It's super cool to run and to use, and especially with 5 being in early access, like now's the time to kind of like learn and do a couple of tutorials, because like, I mean, just doing a couple basic things, you learn so much about game design and the process of it. Like you start to see it in your other interactions with that medium. That in and of itself is like a big enough boon for me to keep going with it. I don't know about you.
Honestly, it doesn't interest me that much, if I'm being completely honest.
That's fair.
It's just like it's another thing, and I'm like, okay. But it's not like I saw it and I was like, whoa. All I know is what I've heard about it. I'm not that guy.
That's fair. That's fair. I am definitely the kind of person who wishes that he could create his own universe in a jar just so I could look at it. And I know that's not an everybody sort of impulse.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not an everybody sort of impulse that wants to live long enough to be able to fly out into space to the point where I can't see any other planets and just sit.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, you could probably get there with a sensory deprivation tank.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just, I don't know. I've always liked space. And I like space sims, and I played a lot of them, like Rebel Galaxy and stuff like that. And I've always wanted to, with a VR headset and a HOTAS setup, play like Elite Dangerous or some shit. But I mean, I want to go to space. but I don't want to go to shitty space like what we've got now. I want to go like
I
Outlaw
want to
Star
go to
space.
good space.
Yeah, I want to go to good space, like fucking Firefly space, where fucking everybody has their own ship and shit. Like, that sounds nice. Going to shitty space where it's like, oh, you gotta train for 30 years to be an astronaut, but then you only get like 5 good years of being an astronaut. It's like being an athlete.
Did you ever? I told you about the fact that I'm getting an Oculus 2, right?
Correct.
So I was looking through my Steam library, and some stuff that's VR ready already. One of them is called Universe Sandbox, and that is a fun particle simulator, universe simulator, where you can literally just be like, okay, well, here's our universe. What if we took another version of our universe over on this side? And what if we launched it at that one? Let's just see what happens. So, I mean, as far as like getting to the point where you're like, you know, you fly out to Saturn and you pull a block of ice out of one of the rings and like sit there and just watch it. That's kind of as close as you're going to get, I think. Highly recommend.
I'll check it out. I mean, I do intend to get a VR setup at some point. They are getting cheaper.
Yeah, and more viable, more better quality of life. You know, it's good stuff.
I have a whole room dedicated to it so I don't knock over bookcases and shit.
Oh, really?
I probably will. You know, at the point where I can afford a VR setup, I'm gonna have enough room to just have a room dedicated to it.
For sure. Yeah, I'm definitely the last time that I was borrowing my friends, I was like, okay, well, we have a pretty good sized kitchen. We're gonna use that. Get all the pots and pans off the stove. We can't store the bike in the kitchen anymore because I need this space. But you'd be surprised at how well and how easily it all comes together. You know, it's made for quality of life.
Just hope VR keeps trying to take off. I don't know. I still think that. Excuse me. I still think that augmented reality is probably where the future is going. You know, like I said earlier, our vision of the future is blinded by the past or by the present.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, Adam Ruins Everything talked about how back in the day before cars were invented, people were thinking that carts were going to be pulled by mechanical horses. Like actual robot horses.
Don't you want that, though?
I would love that. Are you kidding me? A mechanical horse? Everybody wants that.
I've been playing through Resident Evil 8 lately, and like there's a mechanical horse in like the opening scene, and I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. I want.
But basically that's the concept of that is that the people that thought of that understood that automation was going to be the new thing. Right. They just couldn't wrap their head around or even envision the fact that cars would be that automation, right? Mm. They didn't get that because they couldn't. They were stuck in the present, as everyone is. And so, you know, we try and think of what's the future tech. The thing that really gets my goat a whole lot is
Bah.
It is I'm trying. It is one of my goals in life to not be that old person that is like, you know, like, oh, I don't need to understand that new technology, or you kids are always on your phone, stuff like that. Right, I don't want to be that guy. I want to be as flexible mentally now then as I am now, and forward moving with the times and things like that. We'll see what happens. But that is one of the things that I'm going to try and do. And so one of the things that I think of.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I think of is what is going to be the technology that breaks the camel's back? You know, like what is going to be that piece of tech that goes to the point where I go, nah, and make old man noises at it. You know what I mean?
Okay, and what do you think it's going to be?
Well, I had to think hard about this because, you know, like the whole blinded by the present thing.
Right.
So the first thought that I think a lot of people have is like microchips in your head, right?
Okay, like a neural implant kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people think the future is going to be like, and kudos to them. We've had a lot of sci-fi do it. Black Mirror deals with it a lot.
Elon Musk is doing it with pigs.
Fuck Elon Musk. It's a natural reaction for me.
It's a completely natural reaction.
Yeah.
It's I mean, like, okay, the only thing we'll say about Elon Musk is that he comes from such old money that he remembers him and his brother filling their pockets with jade from the jade mine that their father owned, and getting into jade fights and going down to a local jewelers and just like taking fistfuls of jade and putting them onto the counter and selling it for their own purposes. Yeah. That's where they come from.
He's not a great person.
He just has money and he pays smart people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's where a lot of people can probably see, even the sci-fi shows that we have right now, they have neural implants, But even though these people have neural implants, they still have like remotes in their hands to work them. And I'm like, what the fuck would be the point of having a neural implant if you need a remote to work it? And it's basically like it creates an overlay. Like they do things in Black Mirror episodes where like all your memories are stored on the chip and you can like rewind to old memories and like view them in real time. And what everybody else sees is that like your eyes are kind of like this milky color and you're like looking at something else. There's actually like this really disturbing scene where the couple goes to have sex and they basically, both of them,
have milky eyes and they're thinking of something better.
Well, no, what's happening is that they've rewound to what they believe is to be like their best sexual experience, and they're just inside of each other while both of them are like zombies looking at, because you know how people watch screens when they're not paying attention, like they're just looking like that. They're not moving their faces or anything like that because they don't have to. The other person's not looking at them, and they're just sitting here like gyrating their hips as they both look like zombies, just gazing off in the distance at nothing because they're looking at the screen in their eyes. And it's like, that's fucking weird and creepy and all these other things. It's almost like fucking Demolition Man, where they just have like mental sex.
I mean, I was going to bet when you were when I was asking you what was going to be a bridge too far was going to be like the automation of intimacy. I think that's a normal fear for sure.
Well, the concept of that is not the automation of intimacy. It's because they're still being intimate and they're a couple in every other way, but it's just like, I mean, it's basically like watching porn,
right?
While you're banging, which I guess isn't that bad, but it's just like the fact that at least while you're watching porn, like you still have to look at your partner because it's like the screen. Anyway, so what I thought is, I think that not necessarily neural transplants and all that stuff. What I think is that technology for augmented reality is going to get to the point where everyone is going to wear contacts, but they're not going to be like visual correcting contacts. I mean, I'm sure that the people who need them will have them.
You're talking like Google Glass contacts,
basically.
Yeah,
and
there's been some prototypes.
Instead of neural things, they'll just have like maybe some things in like your fingertips so that you can manipulate the screen in your eye, because the screen will be able to tell where your fingers are. So when there's like something that just like comes up on your augmented reality TV screen, basically that is your vision, you put your finger up to it and it knows where your finger is, and you can like tap on that thing and it opens or something like that. And so basically the entire world would just be like waving their hands in front of their faces, manipulating the screen that they're looking at that nobody else can see. And I'll be that old guy like, you fucking kids always waving your hands in the air.
Yeah, I
like
mean,
that's I
think
think
like that.
yeah, but then the other thing that I was thinking of is, why do we have corrective lenses, right? It's to improve our vision.
Sure.
So what's going to happen when technology gets to the point where we can have augmented reality on contact lenses, right? We're going to be able to make people's visions telescopic. We're going to have zoom and enhance cliches in our eyeballs.
Well,
where
actually,
we'll be able to like, I don't know, make like that, you know, when people like put their thumb and forefinger against their other thumb and forefinger to like make that picture thing, you know what I'm talking about?
Take a picture.
Like, well, we'll do that to like take a picture, but then we can like take a picture of something that we're looking at and then like do the finger movement to zoom in, and then we'll be able to like zoom in on something in real time.
Well, I mean, I'll give you this. Telescoping contact lenses are already a thing that have been patented, and there's been some money thrown towards them. I think. Was that?
I said, you see?
It's all happening.
So what I'm saying. Well, I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that. But here's the thing. But here's the thing is that. Yeah, I just went full Porky Pig for a second.
We're both tired. Let's be real.
But I'm not really that tired. But
that's because you're. I've been working on my energy drink for like 2 hours before recording. You just started. Like,
yeah. But well, it's also because I'm talking about a subject that has titillated my brain.
Go for it.
But even still, we're having this discussion about like future technology and all these other things. But this discussion is still tainted by my vision of the present, where I think that the most forward thing is augmented reality. And I think that that's where the future is going. I don't think it's neural implants. I don't think that anybody will ever be okay with neural implants. I don't think that that's ever going to be a thing. But I do think that augmented reality is going to be a thing. Like imagine strolling down the road, looking at a building, and your augmented reality thing like displays the address number and everything that is inside that building.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we're back at the Google Glass thing again. I think there's some validity to that. Can I tell you what I think is going to be the big new piece of tech that's going to cause like a generational divide?
Sure, go for it.
CRISPR. Have you heard of CRISPR?
Oh, that's the DNA manipulation thing?
Yeah, gene editing biological software, right? A lot of the people who are big supporters of CRISPR consider it like the equivalent of like the Gutenberg Bible or the first computer, right? They think it's the start of an industry that's going to lead us to a place where we're going to have to ask ourselves moral questions about like, not necessarily like, do we practice gene editing, or do we like quote unquote like fix genetic problems or something like that, right? More likely than anything, the way it would manifest would be like, a woman is pregnant and expecting, they get a readout of some of the genes, and the doctor says, well, we've noticed a sequence here that, in the genetic code that is often correlated with a tendency for alcoholism. We can talk to your insurer and charge $10,000 and fix that in the womb beforehand. And that comes down to a moral question at that point, right?
Well, and then it also comes down to a logistical question, which is humans pretending that they understand everything.
There's that. There's
like he might say, "Oh, this is a strain that correlates to alcoholism," or fucking whatever other thing.
1,000% no, right?
Yeah, and that's the other thing. If you fix that in the womb, yeah, maybe you just prevented them from having alcoholism, but maybe you just like destroyed their ability to think forwardly or something like that.
Yeah, or even let's say that we get accurate enough that we can accurately say we know that we've solved this propensity towards alcoholism in this person now, right? Well, then we push it forward. What about we notice this strain that's correlated heavily with ADHD or autism or brown eyes? And I know that you're not necessarily a fan of brown eyes, Mrs. Johnson. You know, like...
Sure, yeah. Cosmetic DNA manipulation, making your baby look and be the way that you want it to be.
Right, yeah. The idea of designer babies. And, it, you know...
That's the word, yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, well... I know that it's kind of, like, on its face, it's kind of repulsive to even think in those terms, but, like, it's a conversation that I think that our generation is going to have because, like, the technology is not going to stop existing just because we find it reprehensible, or some people might, or
no. And that's the other,
degrees, right? Yeah.
That's the other thing about being that old man that's like, nah, and all that stuff. Like, there's old people, there's racist people, there's people that fight the tide of technology and all that good stuff, right?
Mm.
Let me ask you a question. Did it stop the technology? Has society regressed significantly?
Or the bigger one is social progress.
Because you can't fucking stop it. You can delay it, sure.
Right, yeah.
You can delay it all you want. We can have the Dark Ages again. Do you want to have the Dark Ages again? Aaron, let's go back to the Dark Ages. Wasn't it a great time? Yeah, me fucking too. So, no, you can't fucking stop technology. And it was more evidenced in, you ever seen Dr. Stone?
It sounds like I should.
It's a great anime.
Okay.
Basically, the concept is the entire world is turned to stone for, like, thousands of years.
Rough.
And the titular main character, his brain is so powerful that he keeps himself alive just by thinking and counting the seconds. And so he basically keeps himself conscious to the point where later on he gets released through some stuff.
It's like if Aang, it's basically like if Aang had to be like awake the whole time.
Kind of, yeah, but on a much larger scale. So all of humanity is gone. The world is basically reset to prehistoric times and all that stuff. And so they have to come up with ways to, live. And the main character is extremely intelligent and knows how to make shit from scratch. Except he's not very physically capable because there's trade-offs for everything. And
sure.
So basically his best friend is this meathead, and he does all the heavy lifting after he gets released. And there's a whole thing with that. But it's really good. They do a lot of good scientific breakdowns and stuff, and they release this guy who is like extremely powerful and hates adults because of how shitty they made society. And
I can vibe with that.
Yeah, so he basically wants to revive only the children.
Okay.
So that society will be better. Because kids are just the best. It's like
they're not dumb at all.
Yeah, and by the way, the guy who they revived that wants to do this is also a teenager. And I'm like, no child whose brain is still developing. People are awful. Children grow into people. Children are also people. People are awful.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, did you not get picked on as a child, you fucking idiot? Okay, anyway. So basically, he wants to get rid of Senju, the main character, because he's going to bring about the resurrection of the humanity and the scientific age, and he would rather just stay in prehistoric times. And I'm like, okay, good luck with that. Have fun in the food chain, but
right. Return to monkey.
Well, this is also the guy in the anime who punched a lion to death.
Okay, well maybe he could return to monkey.
Yeah. Well, but not everybody could, dude.
Yeah.
Fuck. Anyway, so So they basically Senju runs away, and they find a tribe of people that exist, prehistoric people, and one of them is like collecting ingredients and rocks and like experimenting with them and stuff like that, and everybody's calling him crazy, and it's all magic and stuff like that. And to them, like knowing that he can throw a chemical into a rock into a fire and it burns a different color, he's like, look at my mighty science. And
Sure.
And stuff like that. And Senju's sitting here and he has this inner monologue with himself where he says, you see, Tsukasa, which is the name of the primate guy, you can't stop science.
Yeah.
It's gonna, you can burn everything, you can kill people that are doing it, but eventually there's gonna be somebody with curiosity that furthers it. You can't stop it.
Yeah, I mean,
And
well,
so the only thing that you can do,
force to inquire,
Yeah.
for sure.
it's really bizarre to think that science is a natural force.
Well, I think that inquiry and curiosity are natural human forces, right? And so is imagination. Like there were, when there were more than one type of Neanderthal, right? Like there were other groups that were more technically proficient than us, stronger than us, right? But the thing that that we had as an edge over other proto-human species was, and that only we had, was the ability to imagine, right? And I'm not talking John Lennon imagine. I'm talking about imagining a new way to do something, synthesizing information and throwing it into the unknown, and coming up with ideas of stories of gods to pass down and create oral tradition. That thing is inherently within us, right? That is our drive. And I think that, it's not so much that science is necessarily the unstoppable force. I think science is the codification of that innate force within us, right? It's the applying of mathematics and peer review to the thing which we already do, which is try stuff and just see what happens, and that's, going back to it. I want to finish strong here. Going back to the whole idea of us, of humanity being in a unique position of being sentient, and in the unique position of being able to sentiently observe the universe that it's a part of. Like that, that's the part within us. That's the uniquely human part that will never go away. Even if we try to destroy math and books over and over again, like there will always be the need to inquire and to dream.
Which, by the way, if anybody doesn't know, the destruction of math and books has happened repeatedly throughout history.
We keep figuring it out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not only that, but as I stated, it's somebody's eventually going to come back and okay, so there's the whole joke about, and I think I might have brought this up last time, about in Idiocracy, where they make the joke about us forgetting that water is good for us.
Well, there's no electrolytes in water.
Sure. Yeah, Brondo's got it. It's got what plants crave.
What are you going to crave? What are you going to crave in water? Not the electrolytes.
Fluoride. But no, it's like nobody's ever gonna forget, and I still stand by that. We're not going to collectively forget. Sure, there might be some people. I think there's some people now that think that water's not very important, right? But
Yeah.
Collectively, we're not all going to forget that water's good for us. Even if they launch a huge campaign to make people forget that water is good for us over thousands of years, there will always be people being like, "No, idiots, drink water."
I think I got a couple notes for our next episode, my man.
Yeah.
So we're coming up here on like an hour 10 or so.
Yeah, these things just kind of run as long as we ramble.
And we do ramble. So I'm gonna I want to put my foot down. And
Oh, you putting your foot down? Okay.
I want to say goodbye to the folks. Can we say goodbye to the folks?
I would love to say goodbye to the folks.
All right. I'll do my little my shimmy, and if you got anything for me on the back end of it, you let me know. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Dues Paid. Here we are again in exactly the same place that we started, and couldn't be happier about it. We'll catch you on the next one.
See you guys.
Bye. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stop recording here. Yeah.